Massachusetts Democratic Senator Ed Markey serves on the Environment and Public Works Committee, and he joins me now. Good to see you, Senator.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So let's start with what we just heard from Cal, because you've been one of the leading lawmakers on climate policy in the Senate, and before that, frankly, in the House. A senior administration official told NBC News, Senator, that the best way to protect the environment is to make sure the economy is strong. What do you think about that?
Well, that's not what his executive order is doing today. This is not an executive order. This is a declaration of war against wind, against solar, against all renewables, against a clean energy technology revolution, and it's also a denial of the science of climate change. And so the best way for us to create jobs would be, as your last analyst just said, is to move on to this new era. We have hundreds of thousands of jobs in wind and solar. We only have 50 to 60,000 jobs left in the coal industry. And that revolution is just going to continue, not only in the United States, but globally. What they, in this executive order, are saying is that we're going to be the laggard. We're not going to compete. We're going to cede to Germany, to China, the ability to develop these new clean energy technologies, which will then proliferate and create jobs all across the planet, just not here in the United States of America.
A lot going on, so let's also get to the developments surrounding Chairman Nunes over in the House. Do you think that calls from Democrats to recuse himself from their Russia investigation are appropriate? And if so, what's your level of confidence in Chairman Burr over on your side?
Well, I think that Chairman Nunes has compromised himself. You cannot investigate a president and defend him simultaneously. It's a fundamental conflict. By going down to the White House, he, for all intents and purposes, made it impossible to view him going forward as an impartial arbiter of the facts as they are going to be developed. So it's absolutely critical for him to either remove himself or to be removed by Speaker Ryan. That is the only way in which the American public is ultimately going to have confidence in any final conclusion with regard to the Russian interference in our election and in their attempts to influence the Trump administration as it was being put together.
You know, I was just talking to your colleague, Richard Blumenthal. He was saying how all of this ties together in his mind with Judge Gorsuch. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because you are on the record opposing his nomination. And if I can, I'm going to play some sound from a different fellow Democrat this morning. Let's take a listen.
I want to protect the 60-vote rule. I've been very clear about that. I was against what Harry Reid did, Joe, and you know the nuclear option. Right. We should have never gone there. We should be able to come to agreement on the 60 rule if we think that the filibuster is in order.
You know, Democrats opened the door back in 2013 to give Leader McConnell some leeway, make a rule change if he needs to here. Do you expect Neil Gorsuch to be a Supreme Court justice no matter how next week's cloture vote plays out?
Well, that's going to be up to Mitch McConnell and the Republican leadership. This 60-vote margin that has to be reached for Supreme Court justices is meant to be a protection so that whoever is on the Supreme Court for the rest of their life has been able to receive substantial bipartisan support. The situation here isn't where we should be considering the changing of the 60-vote level in order to make it much lower, 51 votes. It should be a change in the candidates to someone who can, in fact, satisfy this 60-vote margin by being well within the mainstream of American jurisprudence. And thus far, Judge Gorsuch has not proven to be a candidate of that caliber.
There's tension on the Hill about this, about whether or not the nuclear option should be imposed. There's obviously a lot of tension about what's going on with Chairman Nunes and everything that surrounds that investigation. So let me just ask you bluntly, what can the Republicans and the Democrats do? Can you work, for example, with Mitch McConnell on infrastructure? Where's this going next? Or can the American people sit back and say, well, here's a couple of years where nothing gets done on Capitol Hill?
Well, we don't control the presidency, the House, or the Senate as Democrats. So a determination as to whether or not the Democrats are going to be able to work with Republicans is actually ultimately going to be made by the Republican leadership. If they want to come together, put together an infrastructure bill that is bipartisan, that works to create jobs all across the country, we want to do that. But if in the process of creating an infrastructure job, they want to undermine labor protections, they want to undermine environmental protections simultaneously, then that's obviously going to create a real obstacle to our ability to...
It doesn't sound like you're optimistic.
I'm hopeful. We just passed a transportation bill out of the committee which I serve on very recently, and it is now the law. And so that was done on a bipartisan basis. My hope going forward in the Trump era is that we can reclaim that sense of bipartisanship in an area that has traditionally been bipartisan: transportation, infrastructure, bridge, roads, airports, all the way down the line. If we can do it, then we have a chance to have a bipartisan bill which can pass.
Senator Markey, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.